Welcome to Light Warrior Radio, where our mission is to empower sensitive souls to harness their superpowers and shine their light, so together we can co-create heaven on earth. I'm your host, Dr. Karen Kanji, author of the #1 best-selling book, Sensitivity is Your Superpower, and founder of the Academy of Light Medicine and the Topican Healing Method. Thank you for joining me. Hello and welcome to Light Warrior Radio. Dr. Karen here, and I have Dr. David Wolf with me. He is the author of this amazing book, Relationships That Work. And I'm going to be honest, when I was first introduced to this book, my business coach, Tim Francis, I was thinking, why is he talking about a relationship book? We're talking about business here. And then he told some stories that were really impactful. It really struck me of how much some of the skills in this book can really affect our lives and the business. And at the time, with a growing team and with growing complexity of my business, I realized there were some times where I could feel frustration either on my end or on my team's end, because I go fast. And sometimes they're like just running after me going, what did you say you wanted done? Right. And so there was frustration. I would cut them off because I already knew what they were going to say. Right. So I'd cut them off and then I'm like, nope, that's not going to work. And let's move on. We don't have time, blah, blah, blah. And they said, yeah, anyway. So I knew that something had to shift. And so when Tim Francis, my coach, said, hey, I really like this work. And then, then they had to be practice in meetings with my team members. And I was like, blah, 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 not so good at it. And I thought, okay, I read the book, but I would really like to learn it. So once I did, I got to meet Dr. David Wolf, our guest today, in person at the Satvatove Foundational Seminar. And we'll talk a little bit more about what that involves. And then that really has transformed my business. Thank you, Dr. David. And my relationships, both with my family and James, my husband, who's here in the back helping out. So let me read your bio. Dr. David B. Wolf, PhD, LCSW, is a pioneer in personal transformation, communication, self-realization, with over 40 years of experience spanning counseling, coaching, spiritual life development. He has guided thousands of individuals and organizations to break through limitations and step into their highest potential. As the founder of Satvatove Institute, Dr. Wolf has led transformative seminars in over 25 countries, teaching transformative communication as a tool for deep self-awareness and conscious living. A world leader in mantra meditation research, he also developed the Vedic personality inventory and has been featured on Fox News, CNN as a communication expert. His book, The Power of Conscious Living, provides practical tools for mastering high-level communication, self-inquiry, and purposeful action. Through his work, he continues to spark a global revolution in consciousness, inspiring people to live with intention and authenticity. And you can find more about his offerings at satvatove.com, SATVATOVE.com. And then we'll ask Dr. David a little later, like, what does that mean? I know what it means, but I think other people would like to know what it means. And today our topic is relationships and relationship magic, which is what I've been experiencing after using some of the techniques and methodologies in Relationships That Work. So Dr. Wolf, welcome to Light Warrior Radio.
Thank you, Dr. Karen. Thank you.
Okay, well, it's lovely to have you here. Really appreciate your time. And I'd love to know, what was your journey to get to this place? I hear bits of, you're doing conflict resolution in these war-torn areas and like, whoa, that sounds like a lot. So how'd you build up to this place?
Actually, I've been involved in the human potential movement since the 1970s, since I was a teenager. And I was involved in different organization seminars involved in human potential, personal transformation, consciousness transformation. And that really resonated with me, actually, at that time, at 17 years old, after high school. I entered university as an engineering major. And then after 3 years in engineering, I was 1 year away from my degree, but through different self-awareness, transformational work, I realized, like, well, it's not really how I want to spend my next 40, 50 years. And then, so I switched. I switched and I got a bachelor's of science in psychology, and that was early 80s. It's a long time ago. And for me, it wasn't intrinsically about just like a switch of major. For me, it meant shifting my focus from that which is more external things to that which is more subtle, like
Mm.
mind and intellect. And simultaneously at that time of my life, I was going to that which was even more subtle than mind or intellect. To use an analogy, like we're not we're not the hardware of the computer, and we're not the software. The hardware is like, okay, the external body, and the software is like subtle matter, mind or intellect. And we're the operator of the computer. The operator of the computer, it that represents the irreducible quanta of consciousness that is actually us. I remember there in Austin, right towards the start of our foundational seminar there, just about 3 months ago or so, and towards the beginning, we took everyone through a quick thought exercise, and we asked everyone to imagine you're looking at a photo of yourself from when you were 5 years old. So, okay. So when we look at that photo of ourselves from when we were 5, do we say, who is this stranger? Who is this person? No. I say, that's David when I was 5. I say, that's Karen, that's Gloria, that's Catherine, that's James, that's Warren. Now we know from basic chemistry, basic science, there's not one molecule, not one atom in the body now that was there at 5. Still, there's some constant identity I call David. So that's kind of like an empirical evidence that constant identity, that atomic unit of sentience that I call I, and it's completely non-physical. So call it spirit soul, the non-material self. And so as my life went on, I was focusing more and more for myself and others on supporting self-realization. And simultaneously there in the early 80s, I got trained at a short-term crisis intervention counseling center in State College, Pennsylvania. And after about a year, I accepted responsibility to train the new counselors at the Hotline Walk-In Center. And so I was cultivating an appreciation for, I'll call it, I use that term a lot, a communication-based approach to self-realization. And so I'm actually not intrinsically interested in collecting communication tools, but I am interested in cultivating expertise, cultivating excellence in all forms of communication, including the expression part, the listening part, to support each other to to move towards that most sublime, from my point of view, that most sublime opportunity in the human form of life. I'm using that term, human form of life, borrowing from Teilhard de Chardin, who said, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And a prime spiritual mentor of mine, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, he uses the analogy of like zeros. If we have a string of 10, 20, 30 zeros, what's the value? The value's a big zero. Now, if we put a 1 in front of the zeros, then the 1 gives value. It becomes a trillion and a quadrillion, a great number. So the zeros represent the different life areas. It could be our physical fitness, our economic development, the kind of house we live in, our career. And we know that, whatever, even if other things are going well, if we're lost to ourselves, alienated from ourselves, it's all an empty experience. And St. Francis said, we're searching for what is searching. my understanding of that is in all that we do and try to acquire, we're always searching for some experience, an experience of love, empowerment, feeling valuable, lovable, peaceful, fulfilled, vibrant, vital, secure. And and those qualities, those experiences, they're actually experiences that are intrinsic to the self that's that's aware of itself. So as the years and decades went on, we developed this communication-based approach to self-realization, to support each other, to differentiate reality from illusion, starting from within ourselves, and to connect with those qualities of the I'll call it the diamond spirit. So it's like an analogy, just like a diamond, it's always effulgent and bright and radiant and strong. And a diamond can become covered. It can be covered by dirt, dust, thick mud. Um, so similarly, we as that irreducible quantum of consciousness, we're always effulgent, giving, loving, secure, powerful, strong, free, vital, and to different degrees and in different ways, we've allowed our original qualities to be covered. And we went into the 90s, 1990s, we started developing what later became known as the Satvatove workshops, the first the kind of like the pilot program for the Satvatove Foundational Seminar, which you participated in about 3 months ago in Austin. That was in 1999 in England, near London. And so these were, well, first shorter workshops, like 3 hours, and then 3 day intensives, focused on cultivating excellence, cultivating mastery in a communication-based approach to self-realization, to support each other, to support the self, to turn towards itself in self-awareness, and to turn towards source with an attitude of devotion. And so, yeah, so my stance, our stance at Satvatove Institute, is that the most vital, the most important thing we can do in human life and human relationships is to support each other in self-discovery.
Mm, that's beautiful. So what I'm hearing you say is like you started like in your teenage years kind of delving in to some of these other, maybe some of the other kids who are looking at baseball or looking at other things, but you're kind of starting your consciousness journey then. And although you finished, or you started with that more left brain career, you switched partway to the psychotherapy, to social work, if you will, and just had this deepening of realization that we're not this meat suit, and initially it was like mind and intellect, but we're not that either.
Mm.
Oh, there's something even more deep, right? And then that's like that irreducible quality of quantum consciousness is just like boom. And so your passion is for using some of these tools that you're teaching us, the conscious communication, the reflective listening, not for the tool itself and go, hey, I got another tool in my tool bag, I'm so awesome. No, it's around helping each other and supporting each other to evolve our consciousness. And what you've noticed is that as people, release some of that dirt and dust and crap off their diamond, that their diamond's already there, it's already shining, and we're just revealing it. And you love and enjoy seeing that happening with people, and that's why you do what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Karen. I feel understood and received.
All right. So thank you. Thank you. Now, guys, I did get to do the whole Satvatove like foundational seminar, right? So this is not the first time I've heard this. Probably the third time after reading the book, but it's really, really inspiring. Because at the end of the day, I some of the quotes that you mentioned, like we are not spiritual, sorry, we are not human, doings. We're not human beings. We're spiritual beings having a human experience,
Yeah, yeah.
and that 3D part of it is, yeah, it's part of the journey. I think, David, you talked a little bit about, yeah, in the foundational seminar that in some teachings, well, I'm paraphrasing, but in some teachings, it's really about getting to the nothing or that we're nothing.
Right. Yeah.
And then your perspective that you resonate with is that we're everything that's covered up. Do you want to unpack that a little bit before we go into conscious communication?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I guess since the 1970s, I've been involved in a lot of personal transformation program seminars and workshops, organizations, so many decades. And and I've seen it. It kind of it simplifies it a bit, but two basic approaches to transformation. One is what I like to call the blank slate approach, where the idea is at the core, we're nothing, and on the foundation of that nothing, we can invent any possibility that we choose. So that's not where we come from. That's not where I come from. So what we're doing in Satvatove Institute, it's based on uh, philosophy and teachings from ancient wisdom traditions such as the Vedas and like that. And so where we come, I call it the diamond approach, not the blank slate approach. That at the core, we're not nothing. At the core, metaphorically, we're diamonds. I know a few years ago, I read this wonderful book by Saint Teresa of Avila called The Interior Castle. And that's from several hundred years ago. And the whole book is really based on that analogy that the actual self is a diamond with seven facets, and in the innermost facet, it's the diamond in pure devotional service to the Supreme Person. And very, very wonderful book. And so transformation, it's not a process of inventing something new that wasn't there. It's a process, as you nicely express. It's a process of uncovering
Mm. And
what's
it seems,
what's intrinsically there. Yeah.
yeah. So I see both perspectives, and right now I'm, gravitating to the one that, that you're aligned with, and in some way, shape, or form, when we talk about in spiritual circles, we talk about being one and unity and all this kind of thing. The way I describe it is like I'm a fractal of source of the all. And
Mm-hmm.
so that my little diamond is that little experience that source is having within this
Mm-hmm.
vessel in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and tell me a little bit about programming, like TV. What I'm not just talking about TV programming, but programming from, schools, parents, politics. Like, how does that affect our diamond?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, we could certainly and to talk about how that affects our diamond. I guess. In response to that, Karen, I'm inclined to shift the language a lot. We talk a lot about how language reflects consciousness.
Ah,
And so to shift it to maybe a language that might reflect a consciousness of relatively more empowerment and a stance of 100% responsibility.
hmm,
So, okay, we can talk about how society and upbringing from parents and education and socioeconomic system and the political system affects the diamond. And then I'll tend to speak more in terms of how we have and how we continue to allow certain conditioning affect us.
hmm,
Because important here, well, there's an aphorism from the ancient Sanskrit, Savai Pumsam Paro Dharmo, Yato Bhaktirat Hokshaje, Ahitukya Pratyataya Yatma Suprasidati. And what that says is, essentially it says, spirit is superior to matter. And And to the extent that our intention is clear and we're connected with self and source on the spiritual platform, the sattvic platform, the name of our institute is Satvatove Institute. The essence of the sattvic quality is to bring to conscious perception that which till now has not been perceived. And so when the diamond self is fully alive in itself, then nothing material can get in the way of its freedom and purposefully and purposely manifesting its intention in co-creation with higher power, source, God, the divine, whatever term one wants to use. So importantly there, sure, yeah, I mean, it is said that the past can explain a lot about the present, but it doesn't take responsibility for it. So yeah, I can look at the circumstances in which I was born and who my parents were and what the schooling was and the advantages and disadvantages and different wonderful things from childhood and different traumatic things and not just from childhood, from decades ago, and that helps me understand why I am who I am, and it doesn't take responsibility for it as far as like how I show up here on May 2nd, 2025 at about 2:50 p.m. Eastern time. I stand 100% responsible for that. Yeah, but
Mm.
what about the society you grew up? Yeah, but what about the political climate and what about the oppression? And yeah, I mean, we don't deny all those influences and how I'm showing up now, whether I'm showing up with enthusiasm and inspiration and connection and care and love or hatred or compassion or bitterness or apathy. I'm 100% responsible for that. Like in political, sociological, psychological discussions, there's often discussion about, two major categories of influence. There's the nature influence and the nurture influence. Well, to something I got from one of the books of Stephen Covey, a saying I like, essentially means nurture means my parents did it to me. And
Mm.
and nature essentially means my grandparents did it to me.
I laughed out loud when you told me the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I'm not denying the effects, the
Yes.
influences of nature and nurture. At the same time, okay, yeah, we can learn a lot about and studying those effects, and what I create in my life today, and how I'm experiencing myself and you, and this moment, and each day. Um, that yeah, that our biography does not need to equal our destiny, and so
Mm.
I stand 100% responsible for this. So there are so many influences, and the intention of the diamond spirit soul is trillions of times more powerful than any of those influences, and that's where I tend to focus.
Ah, yes, yes, you've made it very clear. It is very common for those of us, including myself, to have a habit of blaming, that conditioning, the programming from my parents, or the beliefs, or somebody might say, "Oh, my father was a child molester," or and that's why I'm the way I am. And but then, it took me a long time to realize that I could either be a victim or I could be empowered, but I couldn't be both.
Mm, mm,
So I was like, oh, wow. So either I take responsibility or I'm a victim. And if I'm a victim, I can't change anything. And that sucks. So I'm with you on that, is that it's helpful, like to some degree, to understand the past,
mm, mm,
to know, oh, this is how I was built to this moment. And at the same time, I often say, if that didn't happen to me then, I wouldn't be who I am today, who I really like.
mm.
So I'm really grateful for all that so-called trauma and conditioning or whatever. Yeah.
I very much appreciate what you expressed and how you expressed it, Karen. And yeah, and to the extent that I can speak in I statements, the extent that I'm current and alive, conscious in my self-realization process, then even or especially those events in life that are not how I would have written the script, and we might label as unfortunate, terrible, catastrophic, then we cultivate a capacity to respond even to those events with deeper enthusiasm for self-realization. And that's the platform for the actual fulfillment and joy of the soul. There's a saying by the Greek philosopher Epictetus. He said, the essence of all philosophy is to live such that one's happiness depends as little as possible on external things.
Mhm.
Meaning whether the weather, or someone's insulting me, someone's honoring me, someone's the economics are this, the politics are this. Okay, so like okay, whatever that is, let me each day of my life cultivate fuller capacity and effectiveness to be self-satisfied.
Yeah, I love that word capacity. Yeah, that's exactly how I kind of see it, feel it, in my experience too. Dr. Wolf, is that as I go through challenges, and sometimes I choose these challenges, right? Because
Yeah.
I just desire to have something happen or to create something, right? So I choose these challenges to the degree that they're difficult, actually expands my capacity so that what used to bug me a lot when I was in my 20s, it's like not a big deal now. It's like, okay, whatever. Move on. And then the other capacity that has grown in me personally is compassion,
Mm,
because because I had been there and seen it from that perspective, and now I have this new perspective. I can remember, oh yeah, that's when I had that perspective. I totally get it. They're hurting, they're in pain right now, whatever, whatever. And so I don't have to take things personally, and that's been very freeing, and also very expanding for me.
mm. Wow. Thanks for your personal sharing. Thanks for I appreciate it, and I personally relate to it and resonate with your experience there.
Mm, thank you, David. Um, when it comes to relationships, this has been, or it has been for me, challenging in that when there was conflict, and I understand from, the habit that I developed, but now I'm consciously looking at the habit, is when there's conflict, the energy that I feel in that conflict is very uncomfortable. And I think for most people would say that, but for
Yeah.
highly sensitive souls, of whom all of us on on the Zoom are, we can feel that person's anger at us, directed at us, when it is that way. If they're angry at somebody else, not as big a deal, right? But and that is so challenging. And what I
Mm,
found is some of the things that you taught us, and maybe you can kind of unpack it. How would some of these tools help us in that self realization when we are so uncomfortable? If someone is angry at us and we can feel their energy directed at us. And I just, in the past, just want to run away. Not happening. It's not happening. I'm good. I'm happy. I'm good. As long as I don't think about that other person.
mm. Thanks for sharing that. I'm remembering this was like in the early 90s, so more than 30 years ago. And at that time I was a children and family counselor for the Department of Foster Care for the state of Florida. And my job included yeah, it included like making recommendations to the judge. For example, recommendations about whether a child would go back to their biological parents, or go to adoptions, or stay in foster care. So I remember I remember one incident, and I recommended that a child stay in foster care. And then um, the next day, the biological father, he actually stormed into my office. He stormed into my office, and he was very irate and angry, and he was in a rage towards me, towards David Wolf. Okay, and so these principles, these skills, they're especially challenging to use when the emotional charge is directed towards us. It's one thing if it's like, I hear you have a lot of resentment towards your father. Yeah, I hear that you're really angry towards your boss. Then when the rage is towards me, that's when the skills and the principles are particularly challenging and especially important. And so in that particular scenario, somehow I connected with enough emotional distance to to somehow not take it too personally. And there's different ways I could have responded. I could have yelled back at him. I could have threatened, oh, I'm going to call the police right now. I could have called him names and say, well, what about your what about your alcoholism? I mean, there's so many things I could have done that probably would have uh, escalated the whole yes, the whole very difficult, angry situation. But in that case, I had enough. I was with him. I was with him. I showed understanding. I hear you're enraged with me. You're furious with me. You don't know why I recommended that to the judge, and you're so angry with me and like that. And so I'm not gonna say that at any point in the conversation this gentleman came to like David Wolf, but I was showing understanding. Paul Tillich, the Christian philosopher Paul Tillich, said the first duty of love is to listen.
Mm.
First duty. It's also said people don't care what you know till they know that you care. Often, a powerful way to show that we care is to suspend our judgment, our agreement, our praise, our argument, our disagreement, and to show understanding. So I showed understanding of his anger towards me. And after a relatively a little while, a few minutes, again, not that he came to like me, but his anger was diffused enough and his resentment and his bitterness that we were able to have a mature, frank, open conversation about the goal that we both wanted, which was for his child to be returned to his care. And so, yes, uh, so I'm not saying this is easy. At the same time, this is the principle. It is sometimes said, understanding is like life air. And so just like, let's say if I if someone gets the wind knocked out of them and they're gasping for breath, that we could offer them a pile of money. It wouldn't matter. I just want breath. We could offer them their favorite meal. It wouldn't matter. We could tell them, "You're a great guy." We could. It wouldn't matter. All they want is air. So similarly, especially in emotionally charged situations around hurt, resentment, tormenting anxiety, pain, fear, shame, rage, especially in emotionally charged situations, oftentimes all we want is to be understood. And at those times, even if someone's giving what they consider to be an astute analysis of the situation, yeah, or brilliant advice or praise, and understanding, that doesn't mean agreement. Oh, I agree with you. You're right. No, it's not about agreeing or disagreeing. And so, if in such situations as you described, Karen, and I shared one situation from my life many years ago, yeah, if we're able to suspend our propensity for analysis, advice, suggestion, warning, praising, reassuring, and simply to cross the bridge from our world to the other person's world and show understanding. And that gets to the essence of empathy. Empathy
Mm.
is understanding what someone's saying and the feeling and their worldview, and empathy is also the capacity to communicate that understanding. And then sometimes I've seen thousands of situations with myself and others where sometimes there's this conflict, and when then both parties show understanding of each other, it's not even like they solved the conflict, but it's kind of like, what was the disagreement about anyway? Yeah, because then once then the heart is nurtured and we're getting what we really want, human understanding, and we see, and then the actual conflict about who's going to take out the trash or who owes who what, sometimes, oh, okay, in this trusting understanding environment, commit commitment the commitment to 100% understanding of the other and self, then oh, now we can find 10 ways to solve the external conflict.
Mm. I find that when those energies are really intense and we don't feel, or I don't feel heard, then my whole shtick is to get my point across more.
Yeah.
And in that stress energy, there is no problem solving. I can't problem solve when I'm stressed or when I'm in conflict and wanting to make the other person see my point of view. I'm not listening because I just want them to listen to me. And that happened, in modeled very well in my mom's side of the family. And we've seen it also. We've seen it on TV. So my response was to shrink.
Mhm.
And you didn't call them what were the label, but the label in your book, you talked about communication roadblocks, and you mentioned some of these, that reassurance, and you mentioned several. We'll kind of over those again, but that was mine, David, is that I would be like, oh, you're going to be fine. And the person's like, rah, 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 oh, it'll be fine. It'll work out. And people used to say that to me when I was in the throes of my chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia. Oh, it'll work out. And I'm like, I didn't swear, but I wanted to swear. The F, it's going to work out because I'm going to make it work. Right. Because they were like, oh, you'll be fine. And I'm like, and the other one I do is coaching and counseling. James knows this one well. Where I'm like, well, honey, from the way I see it, you could do this and you could do this and you could do this, right? And he's like, because I'm not listening. So just having you spell out those roadblocks in here, I go, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. Whoa, I'm not going to do that anymore. Can you unpack that a little bit and why those do not work?
Thank you. Thanks for sharing, Karen. Yeah, and so all of those types of communication, advising, analyzing, psychoanalyzing, reassuring, praising, problem solving, um, uh, um, giving a logical argument, they all do have their healthy place in healthy human communication. So it's not like they're wrong.
Right.
They have their healthy place. And what we're looking at here is that as an as an as an initial response to someone with an emotionally charged situation, those sorts of responses, the advising, the suggesting, the praising, reassure, it'll be fine. As an initial response to someone with an emotionally charged situation, they can be roadblocks. Roadblocks to what? Roadblocks to supporting the self, to turn towards itself in a spirit of honest exploration and introspection, a roadblock to the path of self-realization, and a roadblock to trust in the relationship. And yeah, just like yeah, so that if we so like if I see, let's say I have some emotionally charged situation around hurt, shame, confusion, fear, anger, sadness, grief, resentment, woundedness. Okay. And if you're willing to suspend the judgment, the praise, the criticism, the reassurance, the advice, the arguing, the making me right, making me wrong, if you're willing to suspend that, to cross the bridge from Karen world to David world, then and then say, oh yeah, you're understanding me. You're understanding me. Then that's almost surely I'm going to be more deeply inspired, like to share more and to maybe share things that I didn't even realize 5 minutes ago. Whereas if you're there with the roadblocks, and I'm blocked in my own communication with myself and with you. And here's the thing. It's just like often when we use those roadblocks type of communication as roadblocks, and I say that because again, there are healthy places to give advice and analyze for sure. But especially as an initial response to someone with an emotionally charged situation, they tend to block human relations, put up walls, build resentments and in discouragement. Often when we use the roadblocks as roadblocks, it's a lot more about us than it is about the other person. Because let's say if someone comes to me with deep shame or rage or painful anxiety like that. And I'm not comfortable with that intensity of emotion, not in you, not in me. So maybe I'll be like, uh, it'll be fine. You're a really smart guy. You'll figure this out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think you're one of the nicest people I know. You're one of the most research. It'll be fine. To myself, I'm like, wow, she's really like stressed and so much anxiety. She's depressed, and I'm helping her feel better. But it's not really about serving you. It's about my need to avoid the pain of that intent, avoid the pain and discomfort of that intensity of your hurt, your woundedness, your rage. Also in other ways, maybe like you come to me and you have strain and stress and pain, shame, and I'll get, oh, okay, well, you should did you think about this? Hey, what about this idea? Have you done this? This always works for me. You should try it. Okay, like that. Okay, so then I think, well, I'm trying to help. Maybe I am to some extent, but maybe to some extent it's about my need to be needed.
Yep. Hmm. I know that one.
Hmm.
I know that one real well. Oh
So
my God.
you're
I'm an
relating.
expert at at needing to be needed. Yeah. I'm laughing, guys, because I'm just like I resonate with so many of these roadblocks, having done them very well. The reassurance, the fixer upper, right? And yeah, you're absolutely right, Dr. David. I wanted myself to feel better, and that's why I responded that way to that person because I was not comfortable with their world. And you probably know that movie with Robin Williams, What Dreams May Come, I think it is, where he goes to hell and he joins her in hell, like in the emotional hell. And
Mm,
that's when she wakes up and
mm.
she becomes like she wakes up out of the and it's so beautiful. And I didn't get it the first time I watched it. I'm like, well, that was stupid. But now I get it. And it's only then. So you're saying, Dr. David, is that as we do this reflective listening, we enter that we create that bridge to their world. We can empathize. We're not going to, die in their world. Like
Yeah.
we're being with them in that same space, just like Robin Williams was with his wife in that
Mhm.
movie.
Yeah.
And it allows them to see something that they may not have seen.
Yeah.
Like they are their own best healer, if you will. And even though the ego says, "Ooh, I'm such a great healer," no, it's like if we can help the other person be their best healer and trust that if we are just there holding the space with this reflective listening as a tool, that they will then have those self realizations. And that's your whole focus.
Yeah. I like how you express that. Yeah, because what I know, what I know is that I am not the expert in your life, Karen. I'm not the expert in Joanne's life or Glory's or Warren or James or Tia. Um, I trust, at least I'm cultivating trust. I know I trust you as the expert in your life. And my role, whether it's as a friend or a colleague or whatever, my role, my role is not to pretend to be the expert in your life. My role is to cultivate expertise in supporting self-realization, supporting self to turn towards itself and self-awareness, supporting you to connect with that, the inner intuition, the higher guidance within, God within the heart, whatever term we want to use. So that's how I endeavor to be a true friend.
Yes, thank you so much. Well, we're in a moment. We're just going to open up for our special guests here today to ask any questions, comments. If you have a situation you would like a little bit of mini coaching from Dr. Wolf, he's welcome. I mean, he's here. You might as well use the expertise. And also, let me just share for the recording, satvatove.com, SATVATOVE.com, and relationships that work book com is where you can find out more about this beautiful book. And David has written several others as well. So we're kind of focusing on the book today. because relationships to me seems to be pretty much everything of everything. Yeah, I used to think that if I would be just fine, David, if I was in a cave on a mountain by myself in peace, right? And then I realized, wait a second, hmm, that might sound hard, but it's actually easy. Like what's harder is actually interacting. What's
Yeah.
harder is going through pain, trauma, whatever people are going through and being with them in there. And people think holding the space is just going, oh, you poor thing, let me just hold the space for you. That is not holding space. Not in my new realization of it.
Mm.
The skill set of reflective listening is much more for me able to hold space for the other. So thank you for your
Mm.
work. Mm,
Thank you. I appreciate what you just shared because there's something to be said for going to the forest and just being with myself and like that. And that could be the natural, healthy, dharmic thing to do for some of us at some period of life.
yeah.
At the same time, that could also be an escape from our actual, from our actual spiritual warrior service, which is to engage in the field,
Mm,
to engage in the field, to engage in relationship and co-create self-realization in that battlefield of relationship. It's a militaristic analogy, but I think it applies in some ways.
yes, yes. Yeah, it's there's the understanding sometimes avoidance, meaning that if someone's in an abusive situation, they
Yeah.
don't have to continue,
No.
being and living in an abusive situation, like having healthy boundaries, right? That is not okay. And at the same time, avoiding complete communication because you're too scared to say something or too nervous to say something where if it's grating me in here, I know that, okay, something is amiss because I'm holding back and I'm not feeling like I can express myself and share my truth. So, yeah, I think these skills are super helpful. David, I think before I began practicing it in earnest, the reflective listening skills, which is basically reflecting the content of what the person said, but also the affect, meaning the emotion of how they said it. I mean, it sounds so simple, but then once I started doing that, I realized that I'm no longer scared of anybody being mad at me.
Mm.
If they come at me with a machete, maybe, right? But like now I'm like, oh, I know how to handle this. That is so empowering. It's so cool. So I just want to ask our audience here, it was a live audience, if you have any questions, comments, situations, things that you want David. Okay, Warren. And Warren, if you want to, you can come off mute. I'll read your question and then you can come off mute if you'd like. How do you see fulfilling basic human needs like acceptance and respect from others or giving them to oneself? So, Warren, did you want to unpack that a little more so we know what you're referring to or give an example?
Yeah, some people say you should, that's a basic need that you need to get from others. And other people say you should give yourself self-respect or self-love versus getting it from others. There's kind of like a controversy between those two.
Ooh, good question. Yeah. So, yeah, that's very interesting. Do we get stuff from other people or we should be able to generate it ourselves? It's sort of like the same question of, do I need to eat?
Mhm.
Theoretically, I don't need to eat, right? I can take from source directly and bring in the light. My lifestyle would be very different and I would not be, working on the computer X amount of hours per day if I was doing that. And, is there some benefit of this interaction with another? So, David, what do you think? Can we create everything or not create, but nourish ourselves from within 100%? Or do we need the outside to help us with those things, acceptance, respect, those kinds of things?
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the question and that direction of discussion. So, okay. Uh, so I'll speak ideally and then practically. And then that, yeah, so, okay, so the the diamond self is intrinsically, let's say, in the diamond in its cleansed state, in its pure state. We used that analogy earlier. the diamond self is intrinsically fulfilled and joyful and satisfied, self-satisfied. The Sanskrit term is atmarama, atmaramas tamunayo nirgranti apyukrame, and peaceful and playful. And it's not dependent on someone smiled at me. Oh, now they're insulting me. And just so I endeavor for myself and in my relations to others to support others to cultivate that inner satisfaction that's not dependent on others. Okay. In that, I'm not advocating let's be like a wall with a fortress, where it's like, I don't need anyone like that. So for me, this relates to distinctions between dependence, independence, and interdependence. So dependency is where the whole is less than the sum of the parts, or even less than any one part. Sometimes dependency relationships based on need and fear and insecurity, it can look like we're together, but it's like we're dragging each other down out of need. Okay. And so I tend to encourage cultivating independence. And really, it's only two independent individuals or 10 independent individuals. We're talking about a community organization. It's only independent individuals who can truly choose to enter into a healthy, synergistic, interdependent relationship. Because to the extent that I'm dependent and needy and insecure, I don't really have enough of myself available to truly enter into an interdependent relationship where the whole is genuinely greater than the sum of the parts. So then a synergistic means that, yeah, I'm complete and I'm fulfilled and I'm balanced and I'm happy and I'm powerful, I'm lovable, I'm giving, and I'm choosing to enter into relationship with you to expand that exponentially, not from a place of need, rather from a place of purpose, joy, and inspiration.
Mm.
And so that way, yeah, so that way, independence, where like, yeah, I don't need to be in a relationship with you, and I'm choosing to enter into relationship to expand the completeness and the bliss and the contribution to the world, together. So that's some principles that I believe are relevant.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I used to have this is a great question, Warren, because I had the same question, and you just kind of made me remember that because I have found that relationships can be messy, but the messiness helps me unearth areas within myself that I did not know were there. Things to, well, for lack of a better term, things that I could choose to heal or to look at. Because if I'm not in that relationship and it doesn't push my buttons, right? I think I have no buttons to push.
Mm.
So I love the growth of being in a relationship because it presses buttons. Because sometimes we can't see it until we have that mirror of the other person reflected back. And then if even one of the partners has a commitment to reflective listening or some of these skill sets and that empathy, it can change the whole relationship. Now, Glory here has a question, David. Now, Glory is training with me in the level 2 program to be a practitioner. So she's going to be, doing this dance with her clients. So her question is, how do you approach people who are in the victim mentality? I understand that people need to do the work for themselves, but I want to improve that interaction. And Glory, you can unmute if you want to unpack that a little more. Feel free.
Okay, let me go outside. No, so my, oh, sorry. Okay, so the reason why this came up is like, with family and then with people that I'm helping, and people constantly, not constantly, excuse me. They comes up where, oh, I can't do it because of X, Y, and Z. And then you give a solution, the next thing you know, oh, I can't do that. But they're already shotting it down before the opportunity, before they even try it, because they don't think that they're either good enough or they're not enough to that, or even worthy enough to even improve it, their situation. And so just, I would love to just be able to support anybody in that case going forward.
Got it. Got it. Yeah.
Sorry
So
about this.
no, you're fine. It's kind of fun to see outside. Yeah. So I'm hearing you say that you some of these people that you've been trying to help and support and giving suggestions, and maybe that's your role, to give suggestions, and they're just shooting it down like right away, even before even trying, even before considering it. It's almost like they're not really hearing you or listening to you, or maybe they don't even want to change. So how do you deal with people like that? Am I getting you right?
Mhm.
Okay, got it. All right, Dr. David.
Thank you, Glory. Thanks very much for that. Well, there's many principles that are coming to me. Well, one thing is what's the context? What's the context? What's the container of the relationship? Like, is this a client? Is this a friend? Is this a family member? And what's the container of the relationship? Like, are they coming to me for coaching? Are they coming to me for healing? Are they coming to me for advice? Are they coming to me? And really, in their mind, they just want to vent their complaints. Or just, I mean, that might affect, how I respond. And so, yeah, so that. And sometimes I might ask, like a part of Satvatove is our Satvatove Institute School of Transformative Coaching, and we've trained hundreds of transformational coaches and like that. So if it's a coaching capacity, I might ask, and we call it like agenda setting. How come you're here in this session or in this package of sessions? What do you want to create? What do you want to create? And like, well, yeah, I want to create breakthrough in my career and my finances and my spiritual life. What are you here for? And kind of, likely they're not. I'm just here to complain about, how terrible my life is, and what a weak, useless human being I am. That's probably not like why they're there. And so, okay, so then, again, in the spirit of trusting them as the expert in their life. I mean, it's okay. So I hear you're feeling stuck here. I'm going to endeavor to enter their world, be with them in their sense of powerless, helpless, stuck, maybe feeling defeated. And oftentimes, when someone's completely received, growth naturally happens, including growth to a transformed, responsible perspective. And sometimes that can be supported. So like on the basis of empathy, just like let's take a plant, a flower in a garden analogy. Just like if the flower has the water and the sunlight and the nutrients and the proper soil, it doesn't even need to try to grow. It just very naturally grows. And so similarly, when the spirit soul is received in a completely roadblock-free, judgment-free space, growth towards seeing the victim games they're playing, that often happens. And sometimes, and sometimes a principle like an open-ended question, like, what's your realization of how to create breakthrough? And 9 times out of 10, they come up with ideas that are far more better than anything I could come up with them. They truly are the expert in their life. Now, depending on what's the nature of how much trust we have, because I'm willing to be really challenging, even confrontive, to the extent that the trust is there that comes from being understood. If I get challenging or confrontive prematurely, it's going to create a roadblock. But at some point, if someone says, well, I want to do that, but I can't because sometimes I'll say, I don't believe you. Yeah, it's not my role. Look, here's the thing. I'll sometimes tell people. Here's the thing. I'm not, you're trying to sell me that you're this powerless, helpless, weak individual and life just happens to you and you're not capable to be the proactive author of your life. And like my role in your life is just to not believe you. Okay. Like you're just not going to sell me that you're that person. Okay. So like I'm not buying into I'm this weak, worthless like that. Because look, what I know about you is that you're this powerful, effective, creative, innovative, bold, amazing spirit, soul, capable to transcend whatever limits have showed up till now in this lifetime. That's my belief about you. And so sometimes I'll just say, like, that's who I am. Now you can go walk out the door, you can turn away, but so, and sometimes just by sharing that in a bold and caring way, then the spirit soul having a human experience, they connect with transformation. That like, yeah, like this is so good because in my life people buy into I'm this poor lazy victim and I can't do this and I can't do that, and you're just not buying it. This is great. And then they become that person.
Wow. Yeah, that's very inspirational. And you said, Dr. David, that there has to be a high level of trust for
Yeah,
you to be in that bold space. It's not like
yeah,
you meet somebody for the first time and dive into that
yeah.
that piece and confront them necessarily, but you're willing to. And that's a beautiful way of doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah. Glory, do you have any feedback from that or thoughts?
Actually, no, that was very impactful because like we're going to be dealing with with clients, and I want to be able to have a more straightforward approach instead of, oh, you'll be fine, because I've
Right.
used that phrase so many times. And now it's just like I'm thinking about, also thinking about my own family and how I could
Mm.
apply that as well. So no, context and asking the right questions is very helpful. And the whole "I don't believe you" was perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, especially someone you know really well, and that's great. Thank you
Mhm.
so much, Glory. What a
All
great
right. Thank
question.
you both.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So Dr. David, we're coming to the end of our end of our time together. I really want to appreciate you for spending the time with us. If I'll put in the show notes below as well as in the chat one more time the links to where people can find you and the work you do. Perhaps you can give us some, two things before we part. Is number one, what kind of offerings can people find on your website? And then number two, just kind of a parting wisdom, if you will.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, yeah, different things. Well, we have several books, and we've focused here the past hour or so on this one, Relationships, Work, the Power of Conscious Living. And so that's available. Even if someone writes to me personally or our website or the Relationships That Work book website, and there's books, and we conduct coach training courses, including principles and practices of transformative coaching. That's online, and we have our in-person seminars, such as the foundational seminar that you and James participated in about 3 months ago in Austin, Texas, organized by our good friend Tim Francis. And we have our advanced seminar. That's a 6.5-day seminar in person for graduates of the foundational. The next one will be August 2nd to 8th in Groveland, Florida. For graduates of the advanced seminar, we have Satvatove 3 in Adventure and Conscious Living. That's a 4-day in-person experience. And we have 90-minute group coaching sessions online. We have members of Satvatove like Fanon in England and Annette in Switzerland, and they conduct parenting, transformational parenting courses. And we have the managing director of Satvatove, Patrick, he's just kind of in the closing phases of conducting a 40-day men's retreat, hybrid online and in person. So we have lots of offerings, all focused, all based on a communication-based approach to self-realization. And I don't know if I've got much wisdom, much pearls of wisdom to offer. My inclination is that that whether it's in our relation with ourself, whether it's in that relation with ourself, our relation with others, our relation with money or career or physical fitness or spiritual practice, I'm encouraging myself and others to constantly be aware for opportunities to distinguish reality from illusion, and for opportunities in each situation to strive for that value that will never be crushed by time. Because we're eternal beings, as we've established earlier, and we're only going to be truly satisfied with that pleasure, that bliss, that joy, that will never be annihilated by time, whether in 10 seconds from now, a day from now, 100 trillion years from now. So I could unpack that more, but I'll just put that as maybe a closing there.
Awesome. Thank you, David. It's been a pleasure having you here today. Thank you so much for spending your time with us and for your awesome work. And you'll be seeing James at the the Advanced, which is super exciting. And so my community, you can either, depending on when you're listening to this, whether live or on the replay, there are opportunities to either go to Austin, Texas for Tim Francis's version of that, where he underwrites some of the cost of the tuition, or directly through Satvatove, whether it be online, in person. I highly recommend the in-person 3-day foundational seminar. It's definitely worth it, especially if you are in a capacity where you are here to help people as a coach, healer, helper, doctor, psychiatrist, like that is your role, that's your role. Then I think that these skill sets and this self-realization through communication is really, really important. And so that's why I've included it in the level 2 training, is to model that and to discuss it. And everyone's got a copy of the book now because it's that important. So thank you, Dr. David.
Thank you, Dr. Karen, and thank you everyone in the community for welcoming me. I appreciate the consciousness and the discussion. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Light Warrior Radio. Much love. Bye, everyone. Hey, thanks for watching my video. And if it resonated with you, would love for you to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button, perhaps the notification bell, so every time I do a new video, you'll be notified. And feel free to share it with anyone that you think might resonate with that message too. In the meantime, would love to connect with you in my Light Medicine community. We have free mini healings every month and all sorts of really fun things that we do. Not only that, but also we get to lovingly share and support each other in a safe space. It's free to join. I'll put the link below, and I look forward to seeing you there. And remember to introduce yourself when you first come in so we can all say hi. All right. Thanks so much, and we'll see you there.